Welcome back to the deep dive. Usually when we sit down for these, we've got a sack of articles, maybe something that just came out last week. We're almost always chasing the now.
Zeitgeist, yeah. What's happening in this very moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today I want to do something, well, completely different. I want to take you, the listener, and you on a bit of a time travel trip. I want you to just sort of close your eyes and imagine it's 1965.
Okay, that's a very specific time. And it comes with a very specific vibe. We're not in some sterile laboratory.
Oh, no.
We're not in a university lecture hall.
Not at all. It's October 18th, 1965. It's a Monday night. It's getting on maybe close to 9:00 p.m. And we're in the small town of Elmira, New York.
Right.
So imagine a dimly lit living room in an apartment. There's almost certainly some cigarette smoke swirling around in the air because, let's be honest, it's the mid-'60s.
Oh, for sure. It's part of the atmosphere.
And right in the middle of this room, you have a husband and wife, Robert Butts and Jane Roberts. And they are doing something that, quite frankly, blends the utterly domestic-like worrying about kitchen renovations with the absolutely multidimensional.
It creates such a specific feeling, doesn't it? It's chilling in a way because of the high strangeness of what's about to happen, but it's also incredibly relaxed. There's just two people in their living room, peeling back the layers of reality.
That is the perfect way to put it. Domestic high strangeness. We're about to dive deep into session 199 of the early sessions, book 5 of the Seth material.
A classic.
And before we get any further into the smoke and the voices and all of that, I do have to get the official business out of the way. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
We're exploring, not selling.
Exactly. And we are crediting this incredible source material to the Seth material and, of course, the publisher, New Awareness Network.
And it might be worth just setting the stage for anyone who's new to this.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah. So Jane Roberts is the medium. When she goes into a trance, she speaks for an entity, an energy personality essence named Seth. But during these sessions, she refers to herself as Ruburt.
Which is the name Seth uses for her larger, whole self.
Exactly. And her husband, Robert Butts, or Joseph, as Seth calls him, he's the scribe. He's the one there, furiously writing down every single word in his own shorthand.
And the mission for this particular deep dive it's really special. We're not just looking at abstract philosophy today. We're not talking about, the nature of God in some vague, grand way.
No, this is much more hands-on.
Yeah, we are looking at a session that is basically a masterclass in how the inner self communicates with the conscious mind. We've got Seth navigating the human psyche through dreams. We have him validating his own existence with these clairvoyant tests, he calls them.
And my personal favorite part.
Know what you're going to say.
He psychoanalyzes a sneezing fit.
It's the best part. It really is. It covers the full spectrum of this whole phenomenon.
It really does. You have the woo-woo stuff, the remote viewing and telepathy, but then you also have this incredibly grounded psychological insight into fear and ego and resistance.
So let's unpack this, because the session starts in the most mundane way imaginable. It doesn't start with a thunderclap or anything.
No, not at all. It starts with them worrying about their kitchen.
Right. They're sitting there before the trance even begins, and they're stressed about their landlord. They're worried about a carpenter who's supposed to fix something and is, flaking on them. They're worried about a publisher who hasn't written back.
It just grounds everything, doesn't it? It reminds you that this isn't happening on some Himalayan mountaintop.
No.
This is happening in an apartment where the rent is due and, the sink might be leaking.
It's important context. It tells us these were real people living, pretty normal lives while this completely extraordinary thing was happening through them.
They weren't gurus. They were a working class couple trying to figure out how to pay the bills who just happened to be channeling a multidimensional entity on Monday and Wednesday nights.
But then right out of the gate, once the session actually begins, we get hit with what I like to call the validation.
Ah, yes.
And this is where it gets really interesting for, any skeptics out there or just anyone who wants to know, okay, but is any of this real? We have to talk about John Bradley.
Yes, John Bradley. He's a friend of theirs, a witness who'd been sitting in on some of the sessions. And this whole thing, it actually goes back to a prediction Seth made months earlier.
In session 166.
That's the one, back in June.
Okay, so lay this out for us.
Okay.
Because predictions can be so tricky. Usually, a psychic says something vague like, I see a big change coming your way.
Right. You will meet a tall, dark stranger.
Yeah, exactly. But this was specific. What was the prediction?
Seth had told John Bradley, flat out, that he would eventually get involved with a drug firm, a pharmaceutical company, and that it would be located in the Midwest.
And he even narrowed it down more than that.
He did. He said perhaps in Minneapolis. He said it was a small firm, comparatively, but that it was going to expand drastically.
And we really have to pause on the geography there. At the time this prediction is made, John Bradley works for Searle Drug. He lives in Pennsylvania.
Right.
He knows absolutely nothing about drug firms in Minneapolis.
Nothing. To him, it would have just sounded like random noise. Minneapolis. Why on earth Minneapolis? It's completely off his professional radar.
But this session 199, the one we're looking at today, it opens with a reveal. John Bradley had actually visited Jane and Rob that very afternoon.
And he had done some homework.
He decided to check up on Seth.
Well, being a salesman in that industry, he probably had access to directories or resources that, the average person just wouldn't have. And what he found is, it's fascinating.
He discovered 2 small drug houses in Minneapolis.
2 in the exact city Seth predicted.
He found the Fuller Pharmaceutical Co. on Westlake Street.
And the Ulmer Pharmaceutical Co. on Harmon Place.
And John Bradley had never heard of either of them before Seth made that prediction.
I mean, that still gives me a little bit of a chill.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because it's so damn specific. It's not, you will find success in the West. It's Minneapolis and pharmaceuticals. And then the witness, the guy it was told to, goes and finds 2 companies that match the description perfectly.
It really establishes Seth's credibility right at the top of the session. It's like a signal to the listener and to Rob and Jane at the time that Seth has access to, hard data.
Right.
He isn't just a voice in Jane's head spouting philosophy. He can actually see things in the physical world that Jane consciously knows nothing about.
And why do you think that's so important? Well, why start the session that way?
Because of what comes next.
Right.
The entire session is about to pivot from this hard, verifiable external data into something deeply internal, psychological, and, subjective.
Right. We're going from Minneapolis to the landscape of Jane's own mind.
Exactly. If Seth hadn't established his accuracy with the drug firms first, the next part about her dreams might just sound like Jane having a weird nightmare.
I see.
But because he nailed Minneapolis, you're forced to listen to the dream analysis with a completely different level of respect.
That makes total sense. He's buying credibility chips with the audience, so to speak.
He is.
So, okay, let's spend some of those chips. Let's talk about the dream. We have to talk about the radio in the head.
This is one of the most compelling and, I think, honest descriptions of the mediumship experience I've ever read. It just captures the fear and the strangeness of it so well.
So the context here is that Jane had specifically asked for a therapeutic dream. She wanted to understand her own abilities better.
She's grappling with this huge life-altering thing that's happening to her. So she basically asked her inner self, show me what this is. Show me what I'm actually doing.
Be careful what you wish for.
Oh, yeah. She gets exactly what she asked for, and it absolutely terrifies her.
So she describes this dream, or what she calls a dream, where she hears 4 distinct male voices in her head. And they're not faint, they are crystal clear.
Like a radio broadcast.
Exactly. And they're offering her encouragement. And Seth reveals later that 3 of these voices were associates from her past lives. And the 4th voice
was Seth himself.
Can you imagine that? You ask for a little bit of understanding and you get a full-on choir of disembodied voices in your head.
Most people probably check themselves in somewhere.
Well, and instead of feeling empowered by it, like, wow, this is amazing, I have the support team, Jane, in the dream, completely freaks out.
She tries to turn it off. This is the key metaphor of the whole thing. She tries to turn off the radio.
She treats her own mind like an appliance. It's like she's frantically running around the room of her consciousness looking for the off switch because the voices are too real, they're too clear.
And Seth explains this so beautifully. He says that Jane, or Ruburt as he's calling her, was actually in a dissociated state.
So it wasn't a dream, not at first.
No, it was a real experience of clairaudience. She was genuinely hearing them, but her ego, her conscious self, got scared of the implications of the responsibility.
And so she retroactively framed it as a dream.
She turned it into a dream about a radio to distance herself from it. It's a coping mechanism.
I'm not hearing voices. I'm just hearing a radio. It's a rationalization. It makes it safe.
It's the mind desperately trying to make the paranormal normal. If it's a radio, I can control it. If it's a radio, I can find the plug and pull it out of the wall.
But here's the part that really struck me. In the dream, she can't turn it off. She finds another radio on Rob's bookcase.
And that's significant, right? The bookcase is where the Seth transcripts are kept.
Highly significant. It's
Yeah.
the physical manifestation of the work, and she tries to shut that one off, too.
And she gets a shock, a literal physical shock in the dream.
Now, my first thought, and I think most people's first thought, would be to interpret that as a punishment.
Hmm.
Like, don't you dare touch that dial.
A warning shot from the universe.
Yeah. But Seth says that's not it at all.
No, it's so much more profound than that. Seth says, and I'm quoting here, the shock is his knowledge that our material would cease were he to shut off his abilities in such a manner. So the shock, which is one of realization, prevents him.
A shock of realization.
Yeah, it is. That's heavy. It's like her deeper self saying, you can't quit this job.
It's even more than that. It's that the ability isn't a job. It isn't a tool you can just pick up and put down. Seth compares it to breathing.
Breathing.
Yeah. He says the ability is as much a part of him as his breath. You can't just decide to turn off your breathing because you're scared of the air.
Wow.
If you stopped breathing, you'd cease to be. If she turned off this ability completely, she would be cutting off a vital, integral part of her own existence.
I just love that analogy. And I love the humanity of Jane here. You know, she's the medium, she's the vessel for all this incredible wisdom.
But she's also just a person.
Yeah, a person who is sometimes completely terrified by how big this all is. She just wants the off switch. She wants to go back to just worrying about the kitchen renovation. And the fact that she reframes the whole experience as a dream about a radio,
Yeah.
it just shows how the mind uses symbols to process things that are too overwhelming for the conscious ego to handle directly.
It's a buffer.
A psychological safety valve.
Speaking of things the ego can't handle,
Yeah.
we have got to talk about the sneeze.
Ah, yes. The great psychoanalytic interlude.
This is genuinely one of the funniest moments in the early sessions for me. It's just so incredibly human. So what happens is, right before the session starts, Jane is reading this dream account to Rob.
The one we were just talking about, with the radio and the shock.
That's the one. And as she's reading it, Rob suddenly has this violent, uncontrollable sneezing fit.
Just an absolute attack of sneezing. And Rob notes in his own commentary that he felt angry and impatient while it was happening.
Which is such a weird reaction to have to a sneeze.
Right. Usually you're just annoyed, or maybe you're embarrassed if you can't stop. But he was actively angry.
So Seth comes through. Trance begins. And the very first thing he says is, "Good evening, my fine sniffler."
You just have to appreciate Seth's sense of humor. He never misses a beat. He knows exactly what just went down.
But then he gets right into the why. Because in Seth's world, a sneeze is never just a sneeze. It's not dust. It's not pollen.
Oh, absolutely not. Seth diagnoses this immediately as a panic reaction.
A panic reaction. In Rob, why?
Yes. Seth explains that Rob interpreted Jane's dream, specifically the part where she got shocked trying to turn off the radio on his bookcase, as his fault.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see where this is going. Rob is thinking, I'm the one pushing her to do these sessions. I'm the scribe. I'm the one encouraging this.
She's getting shocked, she's scared, and it's because of me.
He's taking on all this guilt.
Exactly. He felt responsible. He internalized that shock from Jane's dream, and his body converted that psychological stress into a physical symptom, the sneezing.
Which conveniently stopped Jane from continuing to read the account.
Precisely. It was a subconscious physical way to shout, "Stop telling me this. I feel too guilty."
That is. It's profound. And it's also hilarious. His body just revolts. I can't hear about your trauma anymore, so I'm going to sneeze until you stop talking.
It's a perfect small-scale example of a psychosomatic event. The mind uses the body to solve an emotional problem it can't deal with consciously. The problem was guilt over Jane's fear. The solution was sneeze so loudly I can't hear her talk about it anymore.
But Seth is very reassuring here. He doesn't scold Rob for it.
No, not at all. He's very gentle. He tells him, you interpreted this to mean that you had pushed him. You have felt this way fairly often. He acknowledges the pattern, but then he reassures Rob. He says that Jane's ego has actually become stronger, even while it has become more flexible.
That is such a crucial concept. Stronger, even while it has become more flexible.
It's a paradox, but it makes perfect sense.
Let's just stop on that for a second, because usually when you hear people talk about spiritual growth or channeling, they talk about ego death.
Right.
They say you have to obliterate the ego, get it out of the way.
But Seth consistently argues the opposite. He says you need a strong ego to handle this material. The analogy I use is high voltage electricity. You need a strong, thick wire, a strong container to conduct it safely.
If the wire is weak, it melts.
If the ego is weak, the personality shatters under the sheer weight of all the psychic data coming through. So Rob wasn't breaking Jane by encouraging her. He was helping her build a stronger, more flexible container for the energy.
That's a great way to think about it. It's the idea that psychic training doesn't break the personality down. It expands it. It makes it more resilient.
And it shows the deep emotional bond between Rob and Jane. You know, they're in this thing together, they worry about each other, and Seth steps in almost like a marriage counselor here to mediate the guilt and the fear between them.
It's amazing. So, okay, we've had the validation in Minneapolis. We've had the internal drama of the radio dream and the psychosomatic sneezing fit. And now the session shifts gears completely.
A hard left turn.
We go from the inner world to the outer world.
It's time for some remote viewing. Remote viewing is the modern term, of course. Seth would have called it clairvoyant attempts. But yeah, that's what's happening. They are trying to tune in to their friends, Bill and Peggy Gallagher.
Who are on vacation in Puerto Rico.
Right.
Now, again, we have to keep reminding ourselves of the date. This is 1965. No internet, no Instagram, no way to see vacation photos in real time.
Rob and Jane have absolutely no idea what the Gallaghers are doing, where they're staying, nothing. They are sitting in their apartment in Elmira, New York, and Seth is trying to see what's happening hundreds of miles away in the Caribbean.
And the details that Seth starts to bring through are just, they're so visually striking.
Let's list some of them, because the texture is what matters.
Okay. He sees a large, white or pale pastel building. He mentions iron grill work. He says a name or a sound, St. Severin or something like that.
Phonetic, yeah. He also describes a pink stucco building with porch enclosures that are round.
That's a weird detail. Round porch enclosures. And he gets really, really specific about a lamp. He says, perhaps in their room, there is a rather elaborate lamp on a table that depicts a scene that glows when it is lit.
That is such a specific random thing to pull out of the air, a lamp that glows with a scene. It's not the kind of thing you'd just guess.
It sounds like one of those kitschy, souvenir lamps you might find in a hotel room in the 60s.
Exactly. But then we get this moment of, well, friction. Rob, who's sitting there dutifully writing all this down, decides he wants to play too.
Which is apparently a big no-no during a live session.
A very big no-no.
So during the break, Rob starts guessing. He starts throwing out his own impressions. He says something like, I bet they are in a long, narrow restaurant.
Oh.
And when Seth comes back through Jane, he literally wags Jane's finger at Rob.
I can just picture that. Jane, eyes closed, deep in trance, just wagging a finger at her husband. And Seth says, Ruburt was correct, Joseph. You should not have given your impressions.
It's like the teacher scolding the student. Quiet in the back of the classroom. But why? Why was it so bad for Rob to guess?
Because Rob's intellectual guessing muddies the water. It pollutes the psychic stream. Seth goes on to explain that Jane had no visual material for some of this, and that she felt better for it.
Meaning she was getting pure data, not her own imagination.
Exactly. She was bypassing her own mental pictures and getting raw information. When Rogue starts guessing a restaurant, he engages that imagination-to-go loop again. He introduces a suggestion.
Which could then influence what Jane sees.
Right. It's called front-loading in modern remote viewing protocols. You never want to tell the viewer anything about the target. You want them to go in completely blind.
That makes sense. So Seth is basically saying, I don't need your help, Joseph.
And then he just piles on more details to prove the point. He mentions Peggy wearing a low-scooped blouse. He mentions them having lunch at a place that sounds like San Mutro or maybe San Benino.
And my absolute favorite detail of the entire session.
I think I know.
A dinner at $3.75. I believe this is the cost.
$3.75. It's so mundane.
That's what makes it so believable. If you were faking this, if you were just making up a psychic story, you'd say a lavish banquet under the stars. You wouldn't say, and the bill was $3.75.
It sounds like he's reading a receipt. And that's often how this kind of data comes through. It's fragmentary. It's not a coherent movie. It's flashes of information. A number, a sound, a color.
He also mentions a blue blanket on the bed. It's this incredible mix of the hyper-specific, like the price of dinner, and this slightly distorted, like the phonetic names. He can't quite read the sign on the restaurant, but he can hear the sound of it.
That is a classic signature of genuine psychic phenomena. The data comes through in fragments, sound, image, feeling, and the medium's brain has to try and translate it. Sometimes that translation is phonetic because the audio channel is clearer than the visual one.
So we leave sunny Puerto Rico, and Seth announces, now, from Puerto Rico to Oswego.
The world tour continues, a little closer to home this time.
Yeah, just up the road in New York State. They're tuning into a Dr. In stream. He's a recurring character in the early sessions.
Right, he's an academic, a professor at the university in Oswego who was very interested in parapsychology.
But he was also a skeptic, or at least he was very analytical. He approached this whole thing like a scientist in a lab coat, with a clipboard.
He wanted to measure it and quantify it.
So Seth tunes in. And again, the hits are very visual, very specific. He sees a fountain pen, a desk, and a pale yellow handkerchief in InStream's breast pocket, folded into a triangle.
The triangle fold, again, it's such a specific visual anchor. It's not just a handkerchief. It's a yellow one folded in a specific way.
But then Seth makes this really interesting comment about Dr. InStream's mindset. He says, he is thinking of us on an intellectual level now, concentrating but trying too hard intellectually.
And then comes the zinger, the line that explains so much. Seth says, if he were to call me an old faker, I should get him more quickly.
I love that line. If he just called me an old faker, I'd hear him better. Why? Why would a direct insult actually help the connection?
Emotional charge. It's a core concept Seth comes back to again and again. Strong emotion, even negative emotion like anger or mockery, creates a much stronger psychic bridge than cool, detached intellectualism.
So emotion is like an amplifier for the signal.
Think of it like a radio broadcast. Cool, intellectual thought is like a weak, low-wattage AM station. It's dry, it's full and static, but strong emotion, anger, fear, joy, love. That's a high-voltage, clear-channel FM broadcast. It creates a signal that blasts right through the static.
So if Dr. InStream got all worked up and started yelling, Seth is a fraud, he'd actually be beaming a signal loud and clear to Elmira.
That's the idea. But sitting there calmly analyzing probabilities and trying to be objective, that's just background noise to Seth. It's a fascinating insight into how this communication actually works. It suggests that telepathy is fundamentally an emotional skill, not an intellectual one.
And speaking of static, they actually run into some real-world interference during this part.
Ah, the squalling child.
Yes. There's a baby crying in the apartment downstairs from Jane and Rob.
And Jane, in her trance state, picks up on it. Seth says, Ruburt gets the child who is squalling below, and it is no help.
It's a great little detail because it shows the vulnerability of the trance state. She's open to signals from Puerto Rico and Oswego, but that also means she's open to the baby crying through the floorboards.
The filter is down. It reminds us that she isn't in some soundproof sensory deprivation tank. She's in a regular apartment building with thin walls. She has to actively tune out the physical world to tune in the non-physical one, which makes the hits she does get even more impressive.
Seth also mentions that Dr. InStream is conducting some hypnosis experiments. Something about direct stimuli applied at a distance.
Sounds very 60s parapsychology, doesn't it? Very Rhine Institute.
A little bit MK Ultra, yeah. But Seth sees a connection between InStream's formal experiments and what they're doing informally in their living room. But he also notes that InStream's experiments are not doing as well as he hoped.
A little bit of psychic gossip.
He is a bit of a gossip, isn't he? By the way, your experiments are failing.
He's just an impartial observer reporting the facts as he sees them.
Okay, so we've done the psychic travelogue. Now we get to the final test of the night. The grand finale. The envelope test.
A staple of the early sessions. Rob puts an unknown object in a sealed double envelope. Jane has no idea what it is. She holds it to her forehead, and Seth gives his impressions.
The object this time is an appointment card. Specifically, an appointment card for Jane's visit to the dentist, for a visit that had already happened, back on May 5th, 1965.
And this is where we get a masterclass in what you might call associative remote viewing. Because Seth doesn't just come out and say it's a dentist card.
That would be too easy.
And frankly, that's rarely how real intuition works. It's not that clean.
No, instead he gives this stream of consciousness series of impressions that seem totally random at first, but then you see how they connect in this incredible, intricate web.
Let's break down the impressions one by one, because this is basically a tutorial on how the subconscious mind organizes data.
Okay, so first impression he gets is a turnabout.
And Jane explains later in the notes that this specific dental appointment was the first time she had ever gone to the dentist voluntarily, willingly.
She usually hated it.
Hated it. Had to be dragged there. So in her own internal filing system, this event was filed under turnabout in attitude.
Okay, that makes sense. Then he gets the color yellow.
Jane wore a bright yellow shift dress to that specific appointment.
A direct hit. Then something swings.
They identified this as the dental drill or the whole apparatus that swings over the chair. You know that feeling when you're lying back and you see that mechanical arm swing over you?
Ugh, yes. I know it well. And then it gets weird. It gets flowers and death of a dog.
Okay, now if you're a skeptic or if you're just looking for a literal one-to-one description, this is where you say, busted. What does a dead dog have to do with a dentist appointment?
Exactly. You'd think she was just way off base, just pulling random images out of her head. But this is where Seth connects the dots.
And it's brilliant. It turns out that years prior, Jane had another dental appointment, and within 2 days of that visit, their beloved dog, Misha, died unexpectedly. It was a very traumatic event for them.
So in Jane's subconscious minds, the concepts dentist and death of dog are filed right next to each other. They're linked by the powerful emotion of that time frame.
It's wild, isn't it? It's like a filing cabinet system where things are filed by feeling, not by the alphabet.
It's completely associative. And the flowers.
That connected to the dentist's wife. Her father had recently passed away, and there had been a funeral service. Hence, flowers and service. And Seth linked the word service, the funeral, with the dental service.
The pun is the connection.
The pun is the psychic link, and he also nailed the number 5.
Yes. The appointment was on May 5th, and it was scheduled for 5:00 p.m. And Seth just picked up the number 5 floating around the object.
So what you're seeing here isn't a photograph of the object. It's not a literal description. It's a feeling map, a web of memories and emotions connected to that object.
That's it, exactly. Seth is explaining that psychic data often comes through these strange-looking association chains. The swinging drill triggers the feeling of the dental chair, which is emotionally linked to the memory of the dead dog, which is linked to the idea of a funeral service.
To the conscious, logical mind, it looks like a complete mess. But to the inner self, it's a perfectly logical chain of emotional connections.
It really changes how you think about intuition, doesn't it? It's not always a clear voice from above saying, go left. Sometimes it's a weird, random memory of a dog popping into your head, and you have to have the presence of mind to decode why.
And that's why Rob's role as the scribe and the verifier was so important. He had to sit there and be the detective. He had to be the one to say, oh, wait, the dog died 3 years ago, right after your last appointment. He had to bridge the gap between the symbol and the reality.
It's a partnership, a multi-dimensional detective agency.
That's a great name for a show. I'd watch that.
So, wow, we have covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from a dimly lit room in Elmira to checking on drug companies in Minneapolis.
From a terrifying dream about a radio to a psychoanalyzed sneezing fit.
From a remote view of a lamp in Puerto Rico to a handkerchief in Oswego, and all the way back to a dentist appointment card from months ago.
It's a real tour de force of everything the Seth material offers. It's not just high-minded spiritual theory. It's gritty, it's verifiable, it's weird, and it's deeply, deeply human.
And it's funny, we can't forget my fine sniffler.
The humor is absolutely essential. It keeps the whole endeavor grounded. It prevents it from ever becoming too pretentious or self-important.
So what does all this mean for us, for you, the person listening right now? What's the big takeaway from a session like this?
I think the key takeaway is hidden right in that radio metaphor from the beginning. Seth tells Jane that her ability, this channel, is as natural as her breath.
Right.
Which implies that we all have this inner self. We all have these radio stations playing in the background of our consciousness.
Most of us just have the volume turned way, way down. Or we're actively trying to find the off switch because the broadcast scares us. Or we just dismiss it as noise.
Precisely. We dismiss our intuition as, oh, that was just a weird dream, or that was just a coincidence, or that's just my imagination running away with me. But what if we stopped trying to turn it off? What if we just listened to the static for a while until we started to hear the voices?
What if we started to trust the weird associations?
That's the question. What radio station are you listening to right now? Are you tuned to the station of fear and doubt? The station of pure logic? Or are you maybe just starting to tune into something else entirely?
And are you brave enough to turn up the volume and see what's playing?
If this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, and I really, really hope it has, you cannot just stop here. We're skimming the surface of an entire ocean of information.
Oh, absolutely. You need to go to the source.
You have to read the Seth material books directly. There is no substitute for the original text. You need to read the full sessions with all of Rob's notes, the introductions, everything.
And you can find them at the New Awareness Network website. Go to sethcenter.com/Layware-sessions. Please support the publisher who has kept this incredible material in print for all these years. It is an absolute treasure trove.
It's a rabbit hole that is well worth falling down. And remember, session 199 is just one night, one session out of hundreds and hundreds.
So I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Seth told Jane that her shock in the dream came from the realization that she couldn't turn off her ability because it was a fundamental part of her. It was her breath.
Hmm.
We often think of psychic or intuitive abilities as these rare superpowers or gifts that are only for a special few. But if Seth is right, it's not a superpower.
It's breathing.
It's just being human.
So maybe just take a deep breath and notice what else comes in with the air.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
Keep questioning.